What's up guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is you today, and if it's your first time stopping by, you are most definitely welcome. So on today's episode, I'm going to be showing us how I made this beautiful little black dress with an open back, of course you can see, and also with these puff sleeves here. So guys, if this is something you're interested in, let's get right into the video. So this is the fabric I'm going to be using. This is a patterned or a flowered crepe. So I got 2 yards of this. So now I'm just going to open this up and fold this. I'm going to fold this into 2 parts. And to know the amount of fabric to use, just divide your hip circumference into 4 and add 2 inches to that. So unfold here guys, I have 12 inches. We are going to be cutting the down part first. So the down part, the hip circumference, is the biggest part of that. So now guys, on fold I have 12 inches and I want this dress to be 30 inches long. So guys, my half length is 16 inches. If you subtract 16 inches from 30, you have 14 inches. So you can see I'm marking from 16 inches to 30 inches and I added 1 inch to that. So guys, you can see I just went ahead to mark 31 inches, and you can see if I measure this from the beginning of where my chalk is, I have 15 inches in length. So 15 inches, that's 14 inches for the length of the down part of the dress and 1 inch for seam allowance. So if you had this 14 inches to the upper part, my upper part, which is 16 inches, we have 30 inches. So now the next thing, I'll come to the beginning of where my chalk started from. That's my waistline. I'm going to mark my waist circumference divided by 4. So I'm gonna add to mark 7 inches. I'll add 1 inch as my seam allowance and also 1 inch for that. I'm going to be taking that at this width, at the waist rather. Then from the waistline, I'm going to come down by 8 inches, which is going to be my hip line. And on that hip line, I'll divide my hip circumference into 4. So my hip circumference is 39 divided by 4. I'm just going to mark that. I got about 9.75. So then I'm going to add 1 inch as my seam allowance. Then I'm going to mark exactly my my hip circumference divided by 4. I'm going to mark that on the knee. So on the knee line guys, I'm going to mark 9.75, and you can see I'm just going to connect all the measurements together. So I'm going to mark 9.75. So on your knee line, that's where your skirt is going to end, where your dress is going to end. Just mark your hip circumference exactly divided by 4. So I'm going to mark that, and I'm going to connect this back to my hip measurements that I took earlier. You can see, so I've connected the skirt shape, and that is it for the front part of the dress. For the skirt, I'm just going to cut this out. So I'm going to be using this to cut out my back, but before that, from the center front, you can see I marked my nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2. That's 7 divided by 2, that's 3.5 inches. This is for my darts, so I'm going to measure my dart length later. So I'll just use this front part to cut my back part, and the only difference is that I'm going to add 1 inch as my zipper allowance for the back part of this skirt. So you can see from the center back, just make sure you have 1 inch, 1.5 inches depending on what you want. So I don't see any reason to waste fabric, so I'll just use 1 inch as my zipper allowance, and I'll cut out the shape of this front skirt. You can see this is very easy. So just cut out the back pattern with the front pattern while adding your zipper allowance. And I'm going to slit the back I've cut. I'm going to slit it into 2. So then also, since I've marked my darts on the front part, I'm going to go ahead to notch that dart area for the front and the back, so I'll know where to place my darts when I'm sewing. So you can see, just notch the dart area together for the front and the back. So that is it. I've gone ahead to cut the down part of my dress. This is the front and the back, so you can see that this is very easy. So now guys, for the upper part of this dress, I'm going to draft this on a pattern paper. So this is my border line. I've gone ahead to mark my border line, which is also my shoulder line. So from that line, guys, I'm going to come down by 9.5 inches, which is my upper bust, my under bust, which is 13 inches, and my half length or waistline, which is 16 inches. I'm just going to go ahead now to mark those measurements at another area so I can get a perfect horizontal line. So you can see I'm just going to connect these points together like so, my upper bust, my under bust, and my waistline. So now the next thing I'm going to do is to mark the neck measurement. The neck wideness for the front is going to be 3.5 inches. Then from there, I'll come down by 2.5 inches as my neck depth. So I'll just connect the 2 points together. You can see. Then I'll rule this back to the center front. Don't forget that this is the front pattern we are cutting, and I'm going to use my curve rule to make a little curve here for the neck curve. So from the center front, guys, I'm going to mark my shoulder line, my shoulder measurement divided by 2, which is 14 divided by 2, that's 7. I'm gonna add to mark 7, and from there I'm going to come down by ½ inch for my shoulder slope, and I'll connect this back into the neckline. So that is it. Then on the bust line, I'm going to mark my shoulder measurement divided by 2 again, and from there I'm going to come up by 2 inches, and I'll connect this back to the shoulder line. So guys, this is a very easy way to get your armhole. My armhole is 7 inches. So from your bust line, just come up by 2 inches, and you can see if I measure this, you can see it gave me 7 inches. So guys, I'm going to get the middle of my armhole, which is 3.5, and I'll go in by ½ inch from there. So I'm just going to connect these 3 points together. This is for my, just to make the front armhole a little shallow so it can accommodate the bust a little bit. I hope you understand. Then guys, I'm going to go ahead now to take my bust circumference divided by 4. I'm going to mark this on my bust line. Then I'm going to add 1 inch as my seam allowance. Then I'll come to my waist circumference divided by 4. I'm going to mark that on the waistline. Waist circumference is 28 divided by 4, that is 7 inches. Then I'm going to add 1 inch as my seam allowance and another 1 inch as my dart, because I'm going to be taking that on this waistline. So guys, I'm just going to connect these points together. I'll connect them like so. You can see starting from my armhole, just connect this in a straight line. Then from the waistline, from the middle, I'm going to come in and mark my nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2. Then I'm going to mark my dart length, which is going to be 2.5 inches. I'm going to increase this dart length later. So then on that measurement I made, I'm going to mark ½ inch on both sides of it for my darts. Then I'll just connect this to the 2.5 inches length I made earlier. You can see this is my dart. So take your dart on the waist. Then I'm going to add ½ inch. This is going to be for my joining allowance to the lower part of this dress. So just add ½ inch to the upper part. Then I'm done with this. I'm going to cut this out. This is the front pattern. So guys, I'm going to be using this front part to cut out the back part, but before that I'm just going to use this to cut on the main fabric, because I'm going to be making alterations. Is that correct? I don't know. I'm going to be, making some adjustment on the pattern paper. So just cut it out on the main fabric first. So guys, you can see this is the upper part of this dress and this is the front pattern. So now the next thing I'm going to do is to use my pattern paper to get where my dart is. I'm going to mark this with a chalk on the main fabric. So I'm just going to notch that part so I can know where to place my dart when I'm sewing. So this is very easy to do. So just notch that area. So you can see, I can see my dart area clearly on the main fabric. So by the time I'm sewing, it won't be a problem to get where my dart is. Then the next thing I'm going to do now, I'm just going to mark my dart length also. As I said, I'm going to increase this dart length later when I'm sewing. So this is it for the front part. You can see that's my dart there. So now guys, the next thing I'm going to do, you can see for the neck part, I went ahead to join a paper to that part. So now guys, remember that the neck wideness for the front is 3.5 inches. Is going to be the same for the back. Make sure the neck wideness is the same thing. The only difference is going to be in the neck depth. For the neck depth of the front, it is 2.5 inches, but for that of the back, it is going to be just 2 inches. So that is the difference between the front and the back. You can see the neck wideness is the same thing, 3.5 inches. And for this neck depth, like I mentioned, it is going to be 2 inches. So that's the only difference between the front and the back. Then I'm just going to rule this out and make my little curve. So that is it for the back. So now guys, I'm going to cancel out the former neck depth. You can see, and this is my new neck depth. So now guys, depending on how opened you want your back to be, you can come in by whatever measurement you want, starting from 3 inches. But for me, I'm going to be making use of 6 inches because I want this to be really open. So once I mark my 6 inches on the waistline, I'm going to come to the neck depth I marked, and from there I'll come down by 4 inches. You can see I've marked 4 inches, and I'm just going to rule this out. I'm going to rule a horizontal line from that point, and I'm also going to rule this 6 inches I marked on the waistline. I'm going to connect them. Then the next thing I'm going to do now is to use my hip curve. You can see what I'm doing. Like I said, depending on how opened you want this to be. So you can see I've used my hip curve to connect both measurements together. So that is it for the back. It's very simple, and I'm just going to cut this out. You might not want yours to be as opened as this, you know, so you can manipulate your curve however way you want. You can even make this a square shaped depending on whatever, you know, style you want this to be. So guys, this is it for my back. This is very simple to do, and I'm just going to cut out the neck area and the hair. That is it for the back, guys. And I'm going to be cutting out 2 pieces of this on my main fabric. So, and when cutting on main fabric, guys, don't forget to add zipper allowance for the upper part. Remember that upper part is going to have zipper allowance, so just add 1 inch, 1.5 inches, again depending on you. I'm going to add 1 inch as my zipper allowance to this, and you can see that my fabric is on fold. This is because I'm going to be cutting out 2 pieces of this. So, and before cutting out again, guys, just add ½ inch round those curved parts. This is so as to use this part to, you know, sew down the center back. That's the center part of that place, because if you don't add allowance to that part, it's going to reduce your measurement. So I just added ½ inch round that curved part. I'm going to be using a bias to turn this part, this curved part, and I'm also going to be using that bias to also turn the neck area also. So you can see, slit your zipper measurements, your zipper allowance rather. And that is it for the back, guys. You can see this is very simple to do. So next thing I'm just going to do is to notch my zipper allowance. So you can see I went ahead to mark 1 inch and I notched that area. So this is what the back is going to look like. You can see that this is very opened. Like I said, if you don't want yours to be as opened as this, use lesser measurements. So now guys, for the band, my band wideness is 2.5 inches on fold, and the length I just added like 4 inches to my actual waist length, so my actual waist measurement. So guys, the band is 5 inches wide and 32 inches long. So now guys, for the sleeve, you can see, just multiply your armhole. My round armhole is 18. I multiplied that by 2 and I got 36 inches. So you can see my sleeve is 37 inches long, and the wideness, my sleeve length, I want this sleeve length to be 10 inches long, and I added 2 inches to that, and also additional 1 inch for extra volume. So the sleeve length that I've cut out is 13 inches long and 36 inches wide. So depending on how voluminous you want your sleeve to be, you can multiply your round armhole by 3 inches, but mine is by 2 inches, so depending on what you want. So now guys, the next thing I'm going to do is to just mark my dart length on the skirt part. You can see this is the back part, and I'm gonna add to mark my dart on my dart area, and my dart length for the back part of my skirt is 4 inches, and this is the back part. Yeah, so 4 inches. I'm going to hold that on the sewing machine, and this is the front skirt. This is the front part, guys. So for the front part, guys, my dart is going to be, you can see it is going to be 3.5 inches long. I'm just going to rule this out. Why I'm doing this is because so as to just go to my sewing machine and, you know, take that down. It's going to be very easy for me. So now guys, for the front length, like I said earlier, I was going to increase this measurement, and now you can see instead of 2.5 inches, I'm making use of 3.5 inches. So that is it, guys. I've gone ahead to hold my darts. You can see this is what they look like, and I've gone ahead to iron them. So now, guys, the next thing I'm going to do is to place the front part of my dress on the back part, and I'm going to hold down the shoulders by 1/2 inch, and I'm also going to hold down the side by 1.5 inches, guys. Instead of 1 inch, hold down your side measurement by 1.5 inches, because remember that this dress you're not going to be putting on a bra, so you want to subtract like 1/2 inch from your measurements, so that your bust area and your waist area can be a little snatched. I hope you understand. So that's what I've gone ahead to do. So now, guys, you can see I've gone ahead to hold down my measurement, and I've also gone ahead to iron them down. You can see that's why it's looking very flat like so. So now the next thing I'm going to use is to use a bias to turn that curved area part I told you guys on the back area, and I'm also going to do the same thing for the neck area. For this part, you can make use of the same fabric you are using, you know, but that means you have to start ironing, you know, to create your bias line. So to make this very easy, just go ahead to use a bias. So make use of a bias that is the color of the material you are making use of. So guys, I'm going to sew one part of my bias on the right side of the fabric. Then the next thing I'm going to do is to turn this. You can see I'm going to turn this to the wrong side. I'm going to use the remainder of the bias to cover this up, and I'm going to sew this down. So this is very easy to do. So yeah, guys, this is it. This is the neck part. You can see I've gone ahead to use my bias to tape that down. So guys, this is what it looks like. You can see it looking very neat. That is what the bias will do. So now, guys, the next thing I'm going to do is to fix a zipper on the zipper allowance for this upper part. You can see this part I'm touching right here. I'm going to be using a zip. So guys, at this point, you don't want to be like me. Make sure you use a zipper that can open, you know, at the ends. I went to make use of a small zipper, so I'm going to show you guys what I mean later. So now, guys, this is the zipper allowance for the down part. I'm just going to hold that. This is the back, and this is the front of the down part of the skirt. I'm just going to place them on each other, and the next thing I'm going to do is to mark my measurements. So I'm going to mark my measurements on the, I'm going to take my waist measurements, and I'll mark my hip line, which is 8, and I'll take my hip circumference divided by 2. So your waist circumference, your hip circumference, you're going to divide them by 2 and take their measurements. And I'm going to connect all the measurements together. You can see what I'm doing. Then I'll take my new measurements. My new measurements will be my hip circumference. I'll subtract 1 from that, and I'll mark the remainder on the new divided by 2. So now, guys, this is very simple. I'm just going to hold this down on both hands and iron it out. You can see this is what it looks like. So now, guys, the next thing I'm going to do is to remove the pins on my zipper allowance that I held earlier, and I'm going to be adding my band to this. You can see, remember that my band is 5 inches wide, and I've gone ahead to iron stay to that, a tissue stay, and you can see what I'm showing you guys. It is 2.5 inches on fold. So now, starting from the end of the skirt where that zipper allowance is, I'm going to sew down my band to my skirt by 1/2 inch. So, and I've gone ahead to use, you can see that this can't open. I went ahead to use that short zip. So for this part, guys, remember to use a zip that can open at the ends, so that you can wear this easily, because you can't put it on, you know, if the zips are closed at the ends like so. So I'm going to fix this later. I'm going to remove this zip and add a zipper that can open and, you know, close along both sides. So now you can see I've gone ahead to add my band to my skirt, and I'll just cut out the excess. Guys, it is better for your band to be longer than for it to be shorter. So I've gone ahead to cut out the excess. So now the next thing I'm going to do is to add the upper part to the lower part. So guys, when adding your upper part to the lower part, make sure that the part that has joining on the upper part is aligned with the part that has joining on the skirt part. I hope you understand. So what I went ahead to do is to chalk that area. So I'm going to make use of my office pin to hold that part down, because you want to make sure that these lines are aligned. You know, if they don't look very perfect, it's going to look as if it's a carpenter that made the dress, you understand. So just make sure that part is well aligned, and That is why your waist measurement for the upper part and the lower part has to be the same. It has to be very correct. So I'm going to hold down my upper part to the lower part by 1/2 inch. I'll take this to the sewing machine now and sew this down. So here it is, guys. You can see looking very fine. I've gone ahead to join my upper part to the lower part, and this is what it looks like. And I'm also gonna add to hem the end of the skirt. I folded it twice and sewed it, I sew it down. Yeah, so now the next thing is to fix the zipper on the skirt part. I'm just going to hold my zipper allowance. So I'm going to mark my zipper length. I want this to be 7 inches long, you can see. And from that 7 inches, guys, I'm going to hold this down to the end of the skirt by the zipper allowance I left, and I'm going to add my zip to that part. But I'll show you guys first what I mean. So here it is. You can see what I mean. I've gone ahead to hold down that part down to the end of the skirt. So now the last thing for me to do before fixing my sleeve is to add my zipper to the back part. So I'll go ahead to do that now. I'll fix a short zip to this part. So I'll just hold down the zip with the zipper allowance I left. I left 1 inch as my zipper allowance when I was cutting the skirt part. So that is it, guys. You can see I've gone ahead to fix a zipper that can open. So that's what it looks like. And I'm also gonna ahead to fix the zip for the down part. So yeah, so now, guys, the next thing now is to fix our sleeves. So now, guys, for the sleeve, I'm going to roll down the end of the sleeve. I'm going to fold that down twice for my elastic casing. You can see that is what it looks like. So now, before I fixing the elastic, I'm going to mark I'm going to notch the middle part of my sleeve just to get the center, and from one center to the other, I'm just going to make little pleats. I prefer pleats to, you know, making gathers. So I'm just going to make pleats. And guys, this pleats you're going to be making, I'm going to make pleats that is 9.5 inches long. Now my armhole, my round armhole is 18 inches divided by 2, that's 9 inches. So one part of my sleeve is going to be 9.5 inches. That 1/2 inch is going to be for joining allowance, to join both ends of the sleeve, and this other part is also going to be 9.5 inches also. So I'll have 19 inches at the end of the day. 18 inches is my round armhole, and the remaining 1 inch is for joining allowance. You can see I have 19 inches. I hope you understand. So just make pleats that is going to be your armhole circumference. So I've gone ahead to make pleat, and I also went ahead to sew down the pleats, you understand, so that it can hold down my pleat in place. So now, guys, to pass my elastic, my round sleeve is 10 inches. I subtracted 3 inches from that, and I went ahead to cut out 7 inches long elastic, and I'm going to be using a safety pin to pass this elastic into the elastic casing I made earlier. You can see I'm just using another pin to hold down the other part of this elastic so that it doesn't go in. So once I'm done doing that, I'm just going to bring both ends of the sleeve together, still holding the pins, you know, and I'm going to sew this down by 1 inch. Remember, I left 1 inch on this hand. So now, guys, this is what it looks like. I'm gonna add to sew down that part, and now the next thing is to fix the sleeve to the armhole. So now, guys, just make sure again that those parts that is joined, those areas that are joined are well aligned. The areas that are joined on the sleeve and also on the armhole are well aligned. And I'm going to use office pin to hold down my sleeve to my armhole. You can see if you do this well, you see that you won't have any excess. And I'm just going to take this to the sewing machine now to sew this down by 1/2 inch. I'm going to do the same thing for the other sleeve. So you can see, guys, this is very simple to do. This is very easy. So like I said, depending on how voluminous you want your sleeve to be, you can, you know, cut out more fabrics to make your sleeve bigger. But for me, this is what I like. So I'm just going to zip this up, guys, and I'm going to be putting this on a mannequin. I've already shown you guys what it looks on my body, so I'm going to put this now on my body form so you can see what it looks like again. So guys, this is what the dress looks like. I really love this dress, and I hope to wear it out to somewhere nice. So guys, please don't forget to give this video a big fat thick thumbs up, and also please subscribe to my channel if you haven't. Okay, I'm going to see you all in my next video. Bye.